I don't know if I should wait for the minute to end so that I can say good afternoon, but good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this session. Before we start, I would kindly like to ask that we all try to move to the front so that we feel like we are together as a community. Yeah, I'm looking. I won't start mentioning names, but if you kindly indulge us and try to move to the front, because we are planning for this session to be a conversation, an interaction between all of us. No? Wow. I think no coffee break for...
We'll just test one otherwise.
Yeah, I'm looking. I'm putting them here. So thanks again for joining us. This session is a joint session among land-based work program activities. And I will be moderating the session together with Antje from GeoLDN. The session is turning coordination into impact and delivering coherent country support across agriculture, land, and biodiversity. And it's developed around the theme of the 3 Rio Conventions, so climate change, biodiversity, and land degradation. So I give it over to my co-moderator to give us the opening remarks.
Thank you, Maccabi. Maybe we can, we have to switch the slides.
Yeah.
How does it work? So I did too many things. So this is, I try to be very brief on this one because we are somehow time management already ran out. So as Maccabi said, it's around the synergies among the 3 Rio Convention: climate, biodiversity, and land degradation, so CCD. And we just want to frame the picture that all of those conventions, and you could even make it further so that it's also the geo-wetlands, it's also about Sendai framework, you could also include them there, have shared indicators and data across different uses. This is actually a graphic that Alistair Graham did for a study for GeoLDN. It's very recent, not yet published. But so the idea is, integrating the indicators, ensuring that those indicators, climate, biodiversity, land, and data are universally available, and harmonization of essential variables. So we have core essential variables and additional essential variables that are all relevant and that are overlapping for the different conventions. And the idea is to have geo as the core integrator of these. So with this community event, we are building on a community event we had in Rome already, where we saw that collaborating in the geo flagships or in the land-related flagships and with the regional initiatives can help to have more coherent and impactful advice and support at the country level. And we identified several to-dos already, and one was also a fixed joint land session at each geo symposium. So this is already what we are doing right now, and also joint planning session, which we will have tomorrow. And with that, I hand over to Maccabi for the flow of the session.
All right. So the objectives, as we have tried to insinuate in the opening remarks, is to identify opportunities for stronger coordination and collaboration across the Geo Work Program activities and the regional initiatives, explore synergies to support the national reporting and implementation under the 3 Rio Conventions, and this involves aligning data and workflows and indicators across the sectors. We will also try to share lessons learned from existing collaborations across the GeoWork program activities, and with your help, generate actionable recommendations to enhance coherence and impact.
Yeah, we asked the, we had a very, oh no, you're going through the, sorry.
No worries. So the session, we are well done with the introduction and welcome. Next, we'll have a statement from one of the conventions, UNCCD. Then we'll have short lightning talks from the speakers telling us what their relationship is and what kind of work they're doing to support the conventions. Then we'll go into a panel discussion. And then we have a very active intention for audience engagement. We will be running through some questions as the panel speaks, and we hope that we get your interactions. Then there'll be a question and answer session at the end, and wrap up and key takeaways. Thank you.
Yeah, we have asked the conventions were very short notice to provide a video because we learned that they couldn't travel to Geneva. So for CBD and FCCC, they couldn't make it in time to produce a video statement, but for UNCCD, we have Baron Orr talking about his vision as focal point in the UNCCD convention of what he expects from GEO and how he sees GEO is supporting the convention.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to contribute to this Group on Earth Observations discussion. From the perspective of the UNCCD, one of our biggest challenges in national reporting has been helping countries navigate an increasingly complex Earth observation and data landscape while ensuring that reporting remains scientifically robust, operationally feasible, and nationally owned. Just a few years ago, the convention was regularly approached by many data providers and tool developers, each offering valuable but often disconnected solutions. For countries, this created complexity rather than clarity. Our collaboration with Group on Earth Observations, and especially the establishment of the GEO Land Degradation Neutrality Initiative in 2018, which is now a flagship, it changed that dynamic. It allowed us to move away from one-off partnerships and toward an inclusive coordination model that connects Earth observation community around clearly defined convention needs. And the results are significant. Today, more than 120 countries are able to map land degradation and report progress towards land degradation neutrality using Earth observation data, dedicated analytical tools, and technical backstopping delivered through regional support hubs and technical advisory institutions. This is a concrete example of coordination delivering impact. At the same time, important challenges remain, and I would highlight two priority areas where GEO's continued support is essential. First, capacity gaps remain substantial. Many countries still need sustained technical support well beyond reporting cycles. Short-term assistance is simply not enough. What countries need is continuity. Second, we need continued progress in harmonizing data sources, methodologies, and workflows across conventions and sectors. Processing constraints for large data sets, uneven access to high quality and high resolution imagery, and inconsistencies in methods continue to limit comparability and efficiency. This is where stronger coordination across GEO initiatives can make a real difference. The opportunity now is to move from coordination in principle to operational integration across initiatives such as GeoGLAM, GeoBON, Global Forest Observations Initiative, and GeoLDN, together with regional infrastructures like Digital Earth Africa and Digital Earth Pacific. Countries should not have to navigate multiple disconnected support systems for agriculture, forest, biodiversity, land degradation. We need shared data and workflows, interoperable tools, aligned indicators where possible, and coordinated help desk and regional support mechanisms that meet countries where they are. We are particularly encouraged by emerging opportunities to connect regional technical support mechanisms established under both the UNCCD and the Convention on Biological Diversity. Institutions already active across both networks are well positioned to accelerate cross-convention learning and provide more coherent implementation support. The next step is clear. Scale and sustain that coordination, deepen interoperability, and make coherent country support, turning all of this into the standard rather than the exception. Thank you very much.
That's a very strong message, isn't it? Yeah. Next we'll go into the lightning talks as we build up to the message that we had from the UNCCD.
Good morning.
Not morning anymore.
Yeah, unfortunately so. But yeah, we appreciate our colleagues at the UNCCD. As I mentioned, we hope that you will engage with us in this session as we interact from the panel and from the audience. So if I may request that you take your phones out and scan the QR code. We'll not use it now, but scan it and then we'll use it in the next few minutes. So we'll go to the lightning talks where our speakers will tell us a little bit about their work, and I will quickly introduce the speakers. We have from GeoGlam, Sven Gillians. He has a background in agricultural engineering with over 2 decades of experience in remote sensing and agriculture, leading numerous international projects in agriculture monitoring, precision farming, and integration of Earth observation data and artificial intelligence. He is the current program director of GeoGlam. Next, we have Alice Hughes, who's a professor at the University of Melbourne and is the co-chair of GeoBon. She has over 16 years of experience working in the Asia-Pacific region. Her work focuses on conservation ecology, biodiversity monitoring, sustainable landscape management, and translating science into policy and conservation action. Ebenezer Intzfull from GeoLDN is a spatial planning and governance expert specializing in inland use planning, ecosystem restoration, and climate resilience. His work focuses on resilience, mangrove restoration, land degradation monitoring, and contributes to global initiatives under GeoLDN and the Abidjan Convention. How many know about the Abidjan Convention? Oh, nice. I didn't. Then we'll have from the Digital Earth Pacific, Andisom Lisa. Many of you have seen her in the morning. She's the Digital Earth Pacific Program Manager, and she ensures that the 22 Pacific Island countries and territories are served with Earth observation for societal benefit areas. She has over 20 years of experience in executive leadership in Earth observations, digital infrastructure, capacity building, and she brings that expertise to us. Last but not least, we have Lisa Maria Rebello from Digital Earth Africa. She is the managing director and she's a principal researcher at the International Water Management Institute with over 20 years experience in natural resource management across Africa and Asia. Her work focuses on application of Earth observation, land and water management, agricultural productivity, and environmental decision making. This is just a very short contraction. They have very long CVs. So we go right into the lightning talks, and you will each have 2 minutes to respond. We have a very strict timekeeper. And we'll start with Sven, then we go to Alice, and then Ebenezer. Then we'll take a short break. Kindly reflect on how your work is connected to any of the 3 Rio synergies. What is your connection, and give us examples of what you do to support this important work. And your 2.
My 2 minutes has begun? Where's my slide then, if my 2 minutes have begun? No, not that slide. Now we're talking. So, good afternoon in the meanwhile. Let me tell you how GeoGlam interacts with the Rio Convention. So GeoGlam original mandate came from the G20, where we needed to increase agricultural market transparency using Earth observation over the past 15 years. And shout out to Joanna Drake this morning that she mentioned that this year is 15 years of GeoGlam. Our mandate has changed and evolved, where we're actually, lots of the work that we do support the Rio Conventions. And I think most the UNFCCC. If we look at UNFCCC, I think a lot of the work of GeoGlam is around adaptation. On the slide on the left part, you see our book on support of national adaptation plans for the agriculture. I am not going to take any questions about that because the expert is also in the room and she's sitting on the other end of the table here. So anything with NAP guidance document, please refer to Macabe, but it actually supports countries to assess impact of climate change on their agriculture and their food security. In the crop monitor, of course, we provide operational drought risk monitoring and agricultural emergency information that supports climate resilience and disaster response. And then on the adaptation side, again, on the transparency and in the mitigation part, we work with CIOS on the global stocktake. Global stocktake is for transparency and where we work with projects from ESA like World Cereal that provides a global scale information of the agricultural state, crop types. Oh, time is up. Then I need to finish quickly. So 1 point adaptation, we're working with CIOS on the adaptation handbook where we provided a great example of work that done by NASA Harvest and FAO for the yield early warning service in Malawi. We'll come back to that. Sorry for being slow.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm here on behalf, and I want to wake everyone up. Some of you will be jet lagged. I'm here on behalf of GeoBon, the Group on Earth Observations Biodiversity Observation Network. GeoBon has more than 4,400 members from across the world and includes a series of different types of BON, Biodiversity Observation Network, including regional, national, and thematic, meaning that we can cover the breadth of biodiversity. We work extensively with a number of conventions, but particularly with the Convention on Biodiversity. So this rather complicated workflow you see up here is what GeoBon does. We try to take and synergize biodiversity data and work at multiple levels to ensure we have the data we need to monitor progress towards biodiversity targets. That includes something that I'm a part of, and Hiroyuki, who is sitting over there, is also a part of, groups like APBON, the Asia Pacific Biodiversity Observation Network, where we work with countries across the regions to census where we do and don't have data and what the gaps look like so we can monitor progress, and then work with different member states as well as more internationally and provide expert training for the Convention on Biodiversity. It was mentioned earlier that we have these essential variables. GeoBon was one of the leading organizations in developing the essential biodiversity variables. And so by ensuring we have the data we need to monitor progress, hopefully we can track if we are moving into the right direction. And when we're not, as is so frequently the case, we can revisit how we manage systems so that we are doing better. GeoBond can only do this through connections at all levels, and so we hope to act as a bridge from the national level up to these global conventions, as well as working with our sister flagships and other working groups within Geo. So that's it from me for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ebenezer.
All right, thank you very much. I'm Ebenezer. I'm representing GeoLDN, Ghana team, and our work relates to the development of a shoreline monitoring system due to how coastal erosion has been affecting coastal communities along the coast in Ghana. So far, we've been able to develop a shoreline monitoring system, which has helped to direct where interventions should go, because GeoLDN has brought together experts within the various sectors within the country to work together to collaborate and ensure synergies where effort is needed so that we can inform interventions. So the work that we've been doing along the eastern coast of Ghana has been extended to the central coast of Ghana, and we are continuously imparting interventions, because most of the times the interventions are in the area of gray intervention, that's the sea defense walls, but we are introducing more of the nature-based solutions and where the nature-based solutions are well needed. So far we've been able to expand it, and we look forward to expanding it to other areas, not only with coastal areas. We are also helping to develop the community adaptation plans, where we bring community members together and we build their capacities, train them on how to restore degraded areas in situ. And this ensures ownership so that even when we are not around, they are able to keep their projects running continuously, making sure that the areas that have been degraded are being restored back to their natural ecosystem. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you for keeping the time. So our next speaker wouldn't make it here in person, but he was very kind enough to make us a video, very short remarks from the GFOI initiative.
Manager of the GFOI office, which is the Secretariat for the Global Forest Observations Initiative, which is Geo's flagship for forests. I'm terribly sorry I can't be there with you in person today, but I'm very glad this discussion is happening and delighted to be able to contribute a couple of brief remarks, albeit remotely. So GFOI is a partnership that supports tropical countries to monitor their forests. Traditionally, our focus has been on climate and helping countries build the national monitoring capabilities they need to report to the UNFCCC on their forest emissions and removals. But we very much recognise that forests do not exist in isolation, and neither do the pressures that are on them. The drivers of forest loss, be it agriculture, mining, or urban expansion, to name just a few, originate largely outside of the forest sector. And the goals we're trying to serve extend well beyond carbon to biodiversity preservation, land degradation, restoration, food security, desertification, and what have you. So in recent years, or in light of this, GFOI has deliberately broadened our focus towards supporting countries to build national forest monitoring systems that can serve multiple purposes, not just carbon reporting, but whatever a country's own priorities may be. And our experience, I think, is quite telling. When you help a country build a monitoring capability around their national priorities, adoption appears to be higher and sustainability is stronger. Once that capability exists around those national priorities, it can be deployed more readily across other sectors, from forests perhaps to agriculture or to biodiversity or to restoration or desertification. And this can be done far more efficiently than building capability in isolation across each of these sectors individually. So this brings me to the broader question of coordination across the GEO work program. I think there are some really nice, tangible things we can do on the supply side perhaps mapping our guidance materials or training materials for commonalities and linkages between the different monitoring forums. Perhaps identifying shared data sets and tools that are already being applied or can be applied across different indicators or for monitoring the same units of land for different purposes, and potentially exploring joint training and capacity building activities that bring the different communities closer together and establish those people-to-people links, which I think are so fundamental to coordination, and has been one of the major successes of the likes of GEO and certainly my own initiative in GFY itself. But I encourage us to not stop at the supply side. I think the real opportunity is actually on the demand side, helping countries clarify their own national priorities and understand how improved monitoring capabilities can serve these. I think when a country drives the agenda and the result is more meaningful, more impactful, and we end up with more sustainable capacity and capacity that can then be deployed more readily across multiple different sectors, such as those represented in the discussion today. So that, I think, is where the real benefits lie and where we can make the most impact as a GEO community. I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much for your time. Wishing you all fruitful discussions and very much looking forward to hearing what the outcomes are. Thank you and enjoy the day. Bye-bye.
Well, I promise that is the last of virtual participation contributions. Next, we'll continue.
Of the GFY office, which is the Secretariat for the Global.
Yeah, we're almost there. We'll continue with the lightning talks, and we'll hear, last but not least, from the Digital Earth Infrastructures, from Lisa and Andiswar. Can you please tell us how your regional initiatives are supporting the 3 Rio conventions in under 2 minutes? Lisa, go first.
Thank you, Makavi. So Digital Earth Africa's connection to the Rio Conventions is fundamentally through enabling countries to access consistent and decision-ready Earth observation data that supports implementation and reporting across various thematic agendas. So we find frequently that working with national agencies, different agencies are using the same underlying data sets to report on, whether it's land cover, vegetation, health and condition, water availability, coastal dynamics, but reporting through separate processes and institutions. So there is a huge opportunity here for shared efficiencies. And so from our perspective, we work to reduce this fragmentation by providing a common digital infrastructure and analysis platform that countries can use across sectors and conventions. And we work closely with national agencies to strengthen capacity in accessing and using operational Earth observation data rather than creating parallel reporting systems. So I think a good example of the Rio synergies in our work, particularly is in land degradation, where through one of our products, the Coastlines Monitoring Tool, it's used through other initiatives to report on coastline change in relation to land degradation through GeoLDN, as well as reporting on FCCC for national adaptation planning through GeoBlue Planet. And we'll hear more about those later today and over the rest of this session. So I think from our perspective, the emphasis really is on supporting harmonizing across those reporting frameworks by better connecting workflows, infrastructures, and country support processes.
Thank you very much. So Digital Earth Pacific is all about using Earth observations to close the data gap that the countries are experiencing. We also leveraging the fact that the Pacific community as an organization is a scientific and technical organization set up to support 22 Pacific Island countries with science and technical capabilities that the administrations, due to their size, are not able to provide for themselves. This means that when we develop Earth observation data products and services, we have a pipeline within the science and the sectors that SPC supports to actually push this through. This includes climate, biodiversity, and land resource management as the core sector. So the partnerships internally in the organization becomes critical. I think Earth observation data is shown in the slide that Antti showed, that was showed before, does show that Earth observation data is one of the key major connectors through the all the three conventions. If I can give an example for climate, how we have supported or how we've worked with the communities on this, the coastline change data set that has been developed for the countries was used in the scientific submissions to the International Court of Justice in 2025. And we now all know that the ruling, which was a milestone ruling by the judges, that the government actions driving climate change are illegal, and states that states are legally bound to cut their vulnerable, legally bound to cut their emissions and compensate the vulnerable nations. For UNCCD, we're supporting with the development of a very high resolution land cover data set that is required for the Pacific SIDS, because all the global data sets that are currently available for reporting are not sufficient to support the countries in their reporting. I'll stop. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You already see that the first question on the Slido is up there, so you're invited to provide your answers to the first question, what you think the common land related indicators are that we can start leveraging from for reporting and implementation of the three conventions. And I would like to ask the speakers more about the synergies of the conventions. You touched it a bit already, and I want to start asking you specifically about the challenges. So, Andiswa, I continue with you. So, Digital Earth Africa is working also a lot on coordination on the ground with governmental institutions. So, where do you see the challenges in creating and leveraging synergies for reporting and implementation for the conventions?
Well, the one area that we all seem to easily navigate towards is the access to data, and data that actually could address all the three conventions, so the harmonization of that. But one of the challenges that we find on the ground is the different focal points for each of these. The focal points for each of these conventions are different at countries, in most countries. The communication or engagement and coordination between these focal points is not necessarily visible. In some instances, they don't even know who the focal point for biodiversity is. And then in some instances, it's the one person who is a focal point for all three. Now, all of these have their own challenges because the level of burden, if you're the only one who's actually the focal point for all three conventions, it becomes very difficult to actually do the work that's actually are required. So I think one of the major elements is this on the ground coordination and getting the focal points as well as the reporting officials to actually talk to each other and coordinate. I think it's one of the things that was coming up with the question that Didiza was asking in the previous session, how we foster the peer-to-peer learning in the country itself, including from the issues to the indicators and to the data. Thanks.
Just quickly, for those of you who are still making your way into the Slido, when you go into the QR code, there are several rooms, so you have to choose this one. This is Obasi room. So it's labeled 26 May, Geoglam, Obasi. That's the correct Slido room.
Thanks, and I would invite Alice also to talk about the challenges in coordinating on data.
So, inevitably, it is always going to be very complex. And whilst GeoBond primarily works with the CBD, obviously one of the major drivers of biodiversity loss is land cover degradation and, of course, climate change. But if we take a step down and go from these organizations to other entities, We also work a lot with IPBES. So GeoBon is hosting the Secretariat for the IPBES International Panel on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services on the monitoring assessment, of which I am a coordinating lead author. And within that, we have to work with IPCC. And so whilst it is a massively complicated network, we see that we have these cross-cutting links at multiple levels. So not just the level of the CBD and UNCCD and UNCCC, but also IPBES to IPPC. And we cannot move forward without having better collaboration between them. It's also really important when we go to one of these meetings. So for example, you go to a CBD meeting, climate change comes up. Oh, that's the other convention. We cannot afford to be pushing the ball when it comes to some of these massive thematic issues that are driving biodiversity loss. We need to look what the synergies are and how we monitor them. And when it comes down to things like the impacts of climate change, monitoring the signal and the impact on biodiversity is often challenging. And we are only going to do that through A, having good collaborations, B, developing effective indicators that actually track some of these more nuanced implications, and C, developing better partnerships, because otherwise we cannot move forwards. And yet these things are still falling between the gaps. And even when we look at the essential variables, do we really have the right ones to capture this magnitude of change? And I don't think we're there yet. So it remains a major challenge where we need to see further growth and further collaboration moving forwards.
Thank you very much, Alice. And I think the conventions tried a little bit to harmonize their indicators. For example, indicator 15.3.1 is part of biodiversity monitoring framework, is part of the UNCCD framework, or there, and also land cover is sort of, but the devil is in the detail always. And I would ask Sven to share your reflections on challenges in indicator definition.
Well, I think I want to build up to what Alice said on partnerships and indicators as well, and indicator definition. And I think from an EO perspective, we also need to be honest to each other, but also to the conventions. Not all of the indicators that are defined now can be monitored with Earth observation. So we're not the solution to everything. And I think one of the activities that we do within GeoGLAM is, and they're mentioned here somewhere, the essential agricultural variables, where we start from policy and we look at what data do we need to support policy, and the other way around, what data do we have and how can that address certain policies. And I think I'm agreeing there, like if we look at the definitions, if we look at those data sets, we should also look at what other policies could those address. And I think for the moment, we're still too much in silos, and I think we're working in silos on land use, or in different domains. But if you look at, you have forest definitions, you have agricultural definitions, but there's so many overlapping areas where we need to check, okay, what are the indicators? How can we work with it? And I think if we come to an operational system where we can bridge the gap between essential agricultural variables, essential biodiversity variables, the climate, when we did the work, we already looked at the climate variables. Do we need to define others, or can we use them? If we do that within the land community, I think we can already address quite a lot and come up with systems that actually supports different conventions. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And I would like to move from the Earth observations reflections to the also to the country side, because we also heard that partnerships are very important. So I would like to ask Ebenezer, so what does coordinated country support look like in practice?
Thank you very much. So this is what coordinated country support look like. So in practice, we are talking about not working in silos. And I will share a practical example of our project in Keita. The area has been exposed to coastal erosion and loss of lives and properties due to land degradation. Over the years, there's been interventions from the Forestry Division, from the Environmental Protection Agency, to plant trees, to restore the areas. But you go back to the areas within 1 or 2 years, you don't see the trees. Next 10 years, you don't see the trees. Now, the coordinated country support does is we bring together sector agencies. So we have the agency responsible for social intervention, for research, for data. We are all working together. We are more than 10 institutions. Then through our collaboration with Digital Earth Africa, they share with us, they give us access to open data. We get the satellite images. We get to know where the degradation is happening. We went on the ground. We had interaction with the local community people. They shared with us how they are affected, and when the sea level rises, the areas that it affects. Then we noticed something interesting. We noticed that there are some community people harvesting the afforested places where there's been restoration. When we engage them, we realize that they've been harvesting the mangroves for economic gains. So this means that irrespective of how much you restore the area will get back to it being degraded. So due to the coordinated efforts, the social intervention aspect with the NDPC came on board that, okay, we can introduce an alternative livelihood support so that the interventions to restore the area will be sustained, and the people who have been engaged in harvesting these mangroves will now channel their energies or get themselves engaged in these alternative livelihood support in order to protect these efforts. Other than that, we will not see the gains that we want to see. Thank you.
Thank you very much for engaging with us on Slido. There is a lot of reactions here. There's a gap between reporting and implementation, data gaps and fragmentation, digital transformation, public-private strategy. Does anybody want to speak to one of these? I'm interested in the gap between reporting and implementation. Anyone wants to, 1 minute, speak to that? Go ahead.
It's just, I wrote that. Daniela from the University of Southampton. So I'm part of the academia side. So we know very well how to create reports, but we are terrible in policy making. So now, especially my university is doing this policy making on how to actually contribute to society beyond numbers and beautiful graphs. So we need to move, especially from academia, from the beautiful data sets and papers to actually make a contribution to society beyond that data. We have created a lot of data now, so we need to move on. So, but for the same, I said that there's a gap because we do really good reporting, but we don't carry on in how it's being implemented, the data that we create.
Great. Yeah, I had a feeling you were going to respond to that.
Of course. So at the moment, there is analysis of what indicators are being used under the Convention on Biodiversity to try to monitor progress towards the targets of the KMGBF, the Coming to Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. We have a monitoring framework that was meant to basically standardize what reporting looked like, so we could see whether you were in Ghana or Burkina Faso or Samoa, if we were making progress towards targets. However, a lot of countries, rather than reporting on the headline indicator, are still using national indicators. And so even when we think about what type of data we need to monitor progress, it is great that we have a monitoring framework. It is not actually providing what countries need. And so we still need to go a long way in terms of thinking about what actually works that is interoperable that countries can monitor progress towards these targets with. Then for the second hurdle, in terms of implementation, we've recently been doing some analysis within Europe, and within various countries, what we see is sometimes there will be legislation like, you are not meant to destroy your natural forest, and it's still happening. And so firstly, we need the data to see, are we making progress? Often we're not. then we say, well, why aren't we? Is there legislation? And often the bottleneck is that there isn't an enforcement mechanism, or that the legislation is so convoluted it's not enforceable. And so we need to think about multiple different points in that chain, from detection to implementation, because the whole often varies, but we can only establish what's working by having those conversations between different agencies, so we can identify what those bottlenecks and weak spots are, and then we can hopefully address them.
Thank you so much for that. I totally agree. Someone wanted to respond, but I think because of time, we should move to the next. Yeah, we'll have some time in the end. So next we'll move into collaboration. What makes collaboration work? And this would like to hear from Digital Earth Pacific and GeoLDN, and we'll hear from Alice as well on the on the regional biodiversity hubs. So tell us what makes collaboration work across the GeoWork program, across institutions, and give us some examples and lessons. And you also have 1 minute, 30 seconds.
I'm going to take some liberties and not particularly answer the first part of your question then with 1 minute, 30 minutes, but maybe answer it from an example perspective. So last year we had a similar conversation in Rome, and what we were looking at is how to build the synergies between the flagships and the regional initiatives. Out of that conversation, the time was the GeoLDN were organizing the regional dialogue forums. So we partnered with them for the delivery of the Pacific Seeds regional dialogue forum. So this is one. You actually want to collaborate. You actually come up with what's our next step? Where can we collaborate immediately next after? This also took it even at the national level. We're talking about these 3 conventions. So with the Pacific Seeds Dialogue Forum, one of the key things that was looked at, even the country participation had to come from the multiple ministries. So Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry, the Ministries of Land, those responsible for biodiversity, and those responsible for climate change. So the delegation was not just one national focal point that's responsible for LDN. It was actually the people that work also in the other conventions. So I think these are the elements of what makes our collaboration work, and to provide the platform for peer-to-peer learning when you're actually having these workshops also means that post that people have a reason to talk to others because they've learned from them and they want to share best practices. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. So adding to what she rightly mentioned, that has to do with capacity building, peer-to-peer learning, and support with data analysis. I will touch a bit into how these things are being put into practice. So I mentioned earlier on with this whole land degradation happening in the eastern coast of the country, it has been extended to central region, where the University of Cape Coast has been helping with the implementation on the ground. So there has been an area where grey intervention has been provided called Commander and Dutch Commander communities. However, after the implementation of these grey interventions, the people still experience coastal erosion, even worse than how they used to be. And our team went in through this coordinated GeoLDN initiative. There were some engagement with the community people. Then they gave some local knowledge to how these erosion happens to them. We help them with the mapping of these areas, and Digital Earth Africa also helped with the analysis from 1993 to 2023. So we were able to have a trend analysis of the coastal erosion. Then we were able to also identify where nature-based solution can complement the grey intervention that has been instituted on the ground. We've been able to guide the people to start with these restoration processes. And now they are feeling the impact much better than when the initial intervention was implemented, only the gray intervention. So it's very good to collaborate with science and data, as well as having support from these regional supports like Digital Earth Africa and RCMRD. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alice. Tell us from the Asia-Oceania region, from the GeoBond perspective, what works?
So of course, what works is massively challenging. We've been working with the CBD because the CBD has their regional support hubs. And so within Asia and the Pacific region, there is a hub that is hosted by SPREP in the Pacific. And there are also hubs in Nanjing as well as in the Philippines. And we've been working with all of them to try to provide expert assistance to countries in basically monitoring progress towards their national targets and also understanding what's needed. However, there is massive heterogeneity in these regions. So I was being an expert in one of the Pacific hubs, and you have everywhere from places like Kiribati and Nauru, which have almost no data, to countries like the Cook Islands and the Solomon Islands, which have fairly good monitoring programs, particularly for marine biodiversity. And so when you are communicating, understanding what that baseline level of knowledge is absolutely critical. And I got asked, well, how do we monitor the birds? And so then you need to understand what that requisite level of knowledge is so that you can build the right partnerships. Within APBON, the Asia Pacific Network, our main hub is in the Philippines, and it's hosted by the ASEAN Biodiversity Center, which is also a regional support node. And so by partnering with them specifically, we can do more across the Asia Pacific region because they, for example, led the regional NBSAP, well, Regional National Strategic Biodiversity Action Plan. And so there we can have the greatest synergy between what countries need and what we are able to do in terms of advising them for monitoring. In addition, of course, with geo initiatives, we work with AOGeo. And so when we had our meeting in Bangkok last year, we also attended the AOGeo Symposium so we can maximize the complementarity between the Asia-Pacific biodiversity and the observation networks, and wherever possible, find synergies so we can develop better cross-cutting indicators within that space.
Thank you so much. And I would like to take this point of the regional hubs. It's also referring to the video that we saw from the UNCCD. So that we know there are CBD hubs now. So we know that UNCCD is currently setting up or also running already the regional support hubs for this current reporting cycle, but it will end after the reporting cycle, and there was the clear call from the UNCCD that countries need continuous support. And so what can GEO help there? What role could regional hubs and help desk play? What needs to be in place to make this successful? And these we have Digital Earth Pacific is hosted at SPC, which is that's right, SPC, which is one of those regional support hubs for the UNCCD. And we also, and Alice, you can refer later on the from the CBD point of view.
So I think the establishment of the regional support hubs currently it specifically focuses, as you correctly said, on the 2026 reporting. That comment that we had on this gap between reporting and implementation, this for me is one of those examples where the focus is being put on reporting and there is no mechanism for implementation. So what would actually be useful, and I think the UNCCD decision on this does envisage that this is more than just reporting, that it's actually support hubs to help countries with the implementation as well. But that requires resourcing. So, and most probably this is why it's only starting with the reporting. I think Baron mentioned it in his intervention that there is an intent to actually make it more continuous and long term. And hopefully, as the support hubs, I think RCMRT for Africa is one, and JRC in Europe is another here. We can show the value of having these support hubs during this process of the 2016 reporting to actually provide enough motivation for it to be made something that's more long-term and much more sustainable.
So I want to speak to that, but I also want to speak to what is on the screen now, because we've had a decent number of submissions, and please interact with your Slido. This is about everyone here. The main thing that has been highlighted on that the screen is we need more indicators. At the moment, almost every UN convention is developing a set of indicators. The problem is if suddenly countries have to report all of these different indicators for all of these different conventions, things are going to fall through the gaps because the burden of reporting is seen as being too high. And already with the interim analysis of what countries are doing to monitor progress towards the 2030 framework, we are not seeing the use of many of the indicators that have been recommended. And so to me, this says two things. It says, one, how do we find better synergies? So the indicator we use for the CBD COP is also a useful indicator for the UNCCD. If we keep increasing the number of things that countries need to report, we're simply not going to have interoperable data. The second is, how do we actually develop those indicators so that they rely on data that is relevant and useful at the national level? What if I were to tell you that about 95% of all of our biodiversity data is from 5 kilometers of a road? And that means for the most intact areas for biodiversity, we have no data. And so unless we think about what countries need at a national level and what the synergies are, then having more indicators isn't going to be useful because you will end up with more fragmentation. We are only going to have better, more useful indicators if we work together to find what those synergies are and where the biggest value add might be.
I think that brings out a very important topic on co-creation and co-development. If we need to talk to the countries so we understand what exactly they need, so that we don't keep developing hundreds of indicators that really don't take us anywhere. So we have a question about help desks, actually. We're gonna skip that. Should we skip that? We're gonna skip that question or come back to it. There. Would you use a help desk or regional support hub, and would you contribute to it as an expert?
Two different questions, right?
Yeah, those are two different questions. So this is the first one. So as you keep answering that, I'm gonna go back to our speakers here, and I'm gonna go back to Lisa and Sven and ask what approaches work for capacity development while serving multiple conventions on the ground, and what can we do better?
So I think from our perspective, a large part of making data more accessible is addressing the capacity gap. And I think we heard that from Baron at the beginning. And I think the importance here is that that is addressed in a long-term and through embedded support, rather than relying on short-term trainings or project-based interventions. It's important from our perspective that there are multiple pathways for capacity building. It needs to be adaptable to the needs of different agencies which have different levels of skills and capacity. And we see this in particular as a Pan-African continental program. But what we've found also works as a standalone learning platform. So a platform that has training materials that are freely available, that are self-paced, that can be worked through on an individual's time or implemented through virtual training sessions, supported through a help desk. And that's a help desk that has a committed response rate of 72 hours. And so over the last few years, that's one mechanism that we've actually had a very positive response to.
Well, I think my answer is similar, but from a different perspective. I think we need more coordination. And what I mean is that within, if you look at a country and you look at the different mandates of different ministries, we've been working very isolated. A lot of the GeoGlam training in the past was clearly focused on Ministry of Agriculture. And I think 2 years ago, we started to expand to also involve other ministries, because depending on the country, different mandates, other people are responsible for early warning. You have meteorological departments, you have ministries of statistics. So, and as soon as you get these people together, you get an interesting view on the needs and the gaps. And if you focus your capacity development on that, you can really start supporting the country as such. So basically what I'm saying, because I need to shorten my answer again, is that if you focus, if you move away from pilots and just from projects, because lots of the things that we do is project-based, if you can try to integrate it in the country, really look at what is the ministry and how can ministries be support, you have a sustainability that is more efficient. So we have to move away from training individuals in a ministry to really capacity development in the country itself, so that it can be continued in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I would like to ask a final thought from all of the speakers in 30 seconds each. What would be your one key recommendation to enhance coherence and impact? So to make it easy, we just, well, we start with Alice and go that way.
So enhancing coherence and impact means being receptive to what is needed and developing partnerships so that we can address those needs. If we continue to work in silos, we might develop the best indicator in the world, but it's never going to be used. And so we can only have impact by making sure that we go from that journey of what data we need to where it can have that impact, and work with countries to ensure that it is effective, as well as working with different agencies and with different organizations, like the different hubs and task forces we have, to ensure that that data is synergized, meaningful, impactful, and answers to multiple different benefits.
Very simply, clearer guidance that speaks to reporting across and aligning across all three conventions.
For me, it's also partnerships and bridging the gaps between different ministries so that you have real country support for your program and for the different conventions.
Yeah, for me, it has to do with also bridging the gap between the conventions, policy, and intervention so that we can match these two together. Thank you.
I guess my recommendation working with small islands, developing states is use, collaborate, and partner with the regional institutions that have been set on the ground. One, for coherence on the actual needs on the ground, and two, for if you're looking for impact, you want sustainment. And for that, you want the people who are going to be there after your initiative has finished. Thanks.
Thanks. And one more round of 30-second answers, starting with Andiswa this time. We heard from Baron that we need to move from coordination to operational integration. So if we met in 2 years, what would be a sign that we have collaborated successfully to reach impact at country level across the multiple conventions?
So because impact takes time, I would actually say for now, we are opportunistic about how we partner and having initiatives. But if we can actually have a work plan that actually shows a detail in terms of how, not just next month, but in the next couple of years, how we're going to be delivering together. That for me would be wonderful. Thanks.
Thank you. I would say every country is putting in efforts to implement some conventions in a way. So in the next 2 years, I would like to see visible and tangible implemented projects or impact on the ground so that we can attest to the fact that this is an output of a convention so that it can be linked to the reporting system. Thank you.
I would want to go one step further than Andiswa. Not only a work plan, but also an implementation in, let's say, 2 countries of an integrated approach. That would be success.
You can push.
And ideally, building on those recommendations, that would result in us seeing reduced duplication, more effective use of limited resources, and improved reporting, particularly in LDCs and SIDS.
So GeoBon is custodian to a number of the headline indicators for the CBD COP's current framework. However, those have been developed in isolation, and we've also been developing a set of One Health indicators, which will come out at this year's Subster and CBD COP. However, those have been developed independently. What I think would be a marker of success would be having more synergies between working groups, flagships, and task forces. So rather than developing them in silos, we are truly co-developing them and better making use of resources available rather than things running in parallel.
Thank you very much. So we ask you the same question, but I'm a little sad that we have a room, I think about 50 people, but there's only 5 people responding. Yeah? You want to give us a recommendation, Amos? Go ahead.
Yes, I think the issue that has been mentioned by all of you, especially the issue of the indicators, is something that is really critical. Because if you look at all the conventions, some conventions have more money in the country than other conventions. So my question is, for example, in Ghana, the president recently launched what we call a national AI strategy. And this AI strategy is a way of measuring our progress in all the conventions one way or the other. But at the back of this is also about creating jobs for the young people. So the question is, can we, GEO, with this panel, as a convening power, think of a pilot project that tries to look at an AI system that tries to look at all these indicators and coming out with something that countries can really understand? Because I think if we are able to have a proof of concept of that, at least it will move towards what we call some resources, national resources, that can move in a long way in helping, whether it's about agriculture or biodiversity or land degradation. I know it's going to be difficult, but it will require someone or one flagship to lead the way, because there has to be some way whereby at least few countries can judge and come out with some kind of proof of concept. Because if not, what we might see is that maybe within GeoLDN, we also say we want essential land variables. So there will be a lot of indicators everywhere, but in the end, they are not moving towards making the necessary impact on the ground. Thank you.
I think that was first, yeah? Nigeria.
Thank you for acknowledging me. For me, I think we are very good at speaking to ourselves, so we understand our language. But the policymakers don't understand us the way we understand ourselves. So my suggestion would be for us to improve the way we communicate with the decision makers. The politicians They don't understand most of the jargons. They want to see what contributes to their political careers. So my suggestion would be for us to work out ways and mechanism for effective communication with the policymakers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I saw a hand from this side. Was there a hand? Any other contribution? No? Ah, go ahead.
Okay. Well, thanks. Mine is just a simple one. We have, from my point of view, we have two main indicators: the tangible, which we can express very well, but how do we express the intangible indicators to those who feel that they want to express the environment based on their intangible needs? So how do we transform the intangible or come out with an intangible indicator for resilience or for resource management and likes? Thanks.
Thanks very much. And just maybe a quick reflection on use of indicators across frameworks. Of course, there's rather too many, right? We have too many indicators. We don't know what to do with them. And at the same time, a subset of all of these indicators have been formally adopted through negotiations. So it's kind of hard to step too far away from that. We have to use the process the way it's established and what it's for, and then find ways of harmonizing increasingly. It's the same countries adopting all these indicators. So how can they increasingly adopt indicators that are coherent across frameworks within these separate frameworks? There are many things that could change or could be perfect, but they're not going to be perfect anytime soon. So how do we make something good out of what is actually not so bad? You know, the GBF indicator framework needs improvement, but it's the one we have. The Convention on Wetlands indicator framework is highly aligned with that of the CBD. And in our case, the national report questions are actually immediately tied to the indicator framework, and that's what countries report on. And the reporting rate is high. So there are data streams that can be used. Yes, they're imperfect, but they actually serve the purpose of tracking implementation of the GBF as well as the SDGs. And then perhaps last point on that is how should I put this nicely? Maybe I shouldn't put this forward at all. No, let me stop there. Thank you.
Oh, come on, Jenkins.
Now you have to put it forward. Go ahead.
No, actually, this is not what I was going to say, but it's even more important. There's cases where we can actually put this to practice in a better way than is otherwise happening. So for example, many SIDS, it's more than anywhere else, it's in their self-interest to integrate things in national planning. In fact, I think people in small islands mostly have a very integrated perception of nature and humanity and so on. So the way systems work, or the preconditions for making an integrated approach work with meaningful indicators that cut across biomes, but also social and ecological systems, is much greater. So your case studies in SIDS would serve the countries well, and then also actually improve reporting and importantly improve the data for decision making. And then last point, sorry, is the fact that if you look across convention frameworks and you actually really scrutinize the decisions, there's no end to the number of decisions that call for a greater degree of integration and coordination. Certainly in our convention, decisions on synergies from the last 3, 4, 5 cycles of COPs explicitly call for mechanisms at the national level to coordinate across the agencies that represent the country in different conventions, and to integrate data systems and to integrate reporting. So the political signal is there. How do you convert that into action?
Isn't that the question? Yeah. I think this is a very wonderful discussion, but I think we've only just touched the tip of the iceberg. So we will have another session and hopefully we'll see most of you there. We'll have a few minutes to share with you the key takeaways. 1 minute for the key takeaways, and then we close the session.
Yeah, thanks, Makabe. So I start with some recommendations from the very beginning from GEO4I. It's clear that for more and enhanced impact, we need to strengthen the cooperation and coordination between those flagships and institutions that we have here on the panel, but all over GEO that work in this field of land. Across the agriculture, across land degradation, biodiversity, and climate agendas. And yeah, it was very clear today, we need to stop working and thinking in silos and stop this fragmentation, as Ella said it nicely. We need to improve the harmonization of indicators, the workflows, and EO data sets across the conventions to reduce the duplication and also, of course, the burden for the countries to report. And which was nicely said again by you, Lisa, from Digital Earth Africa, and Diswa as well. We need to promote more interoperable and analysis-ready data sets that can be used across multiple thematic domains and conventions. And also very nicely said, we need to focus on the ground coordination, meaning strengthening the coordination at country level. So we need to bring together technical reporting officers, sectoral ministries. We heard that especially from Ghana, but that's quite true for, I guess, all countries, including a very good understanding, that was nicely said by Alice, of where the country stands, not only at the level of data that is available, but also the knowledge, how to make use of this data and how to make use of the tools, because it's very individual. And I assume, especially in small countries, there's not 100 people working on this, but like 2 or 3 people have to manage 3 conventions. So yeah, they have a different knowledge level, of course, which also brings me to the point that we always hear. It's not about knowing how to use data, but which questions do you need to ask, and then you know what data sets, what tools you can use. So that's actually the point often. And then, of course, we need a better support hubs network and help mechanism to improve. We heard that to improve support for the countries, also behind the reporting, because reporting is only one step, but that's not implementation, right? That's just reporting. Helpful. We don't start from scratch. I mean, there is existing collaboration. There was a nice example, again, from GeoLDN on how Digital Earth Africa coordinated together with a team in Ghana. And we just need to scale these models. It's not that we start from scratch. And so I shorted a bit. I think one thing that we also need to improve is accessibility and usability of data for least developing countries, for the SIDS for small developing countries. And finally, we need to, that was also said by Sven, we need to strengthen the role of GEO as an integrative platform and also to align standards and governance processes. And to continue this discussion that was really lively today, again, we would like to invite you for a session that we have tomorrow at 3:30, where we would like to bring as much GEO and land-related initiatives. Which room is it up? That's the room actually on the slide. So please come and join. And yeah, if you need more information, please come back to us as well. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much. I just realized now we don't have the time there. The time is from 3:30 to 4:30. Yeah. That's when we have the session. You're all welcome to join us. And we have come to the end of the session. I hope you enjoyed it. We for sure were very intrigued by the discussions. And we already started thinking, I think most of us started thinking where we could already start synergizing or exploring the intention of it. So thank you very much. We break now for lunch and we come back at 2 o'clock. If you ordered a warm lunch, you will go upstairs to the cafeteria. It's on the attic. So when you get to the elevators, press attic, takes you there. If you ordered a cold lunch, sandwiches, you will find them right outside at the coffee break areas. Thank you very much, and we appreciate your time.